I've noticed that when someone is truly for you, you don't have to convince them. You don't have to explain your boundaries, and you don't have to perform closeness to keep the relationship intact. That's usually the first sign. When someone is for you, things don't get louder, they get quieter. There's less tension, less pressure, and less monitoring. You don't feel like you're constantly being evaluated or interpreted. You're just allowed to be who you are. I used to think that connection required effort, that if something mattered, it should feel intense. But what I've learned is that alignment doesn't feel intense, it feels steady. People who are for you don't need access to feel secure. They don't need constant updates. They don't need to stay embedded in your life to trust the connection. They don't panic when you change. They don't take your growth personally. And they don't frame your boundaries as rejection. They adjust. And that adjustment happens quietly. There's no negotiation, no guilt, and no subtle punishment, just movement. I've noticed that with aligned people, distance doesn't create drama, it creates clarity. You can go longer without talking, and when you reconnect, nothing feels off. There's no scorekeeping, no passive tension, and no need to reestablish your place. You don't feel like you're starting over because alignment doesn't reset every time space appears. Another thing I've noticed is that aligned people don't need you to manage their emotions. They don't require you to soften your truth. They don't expect you to carry discomfort so the relationship can survive. If something needs to be addressed, it is, without theatrics. There's accountability without collapse, repair without humiliation, and respect without performance. You're not asked to overfunction to keep things stable. You're not the glue, and that's how you know. When someone is for you, you don't feel managed. You don't feel monitored. You don't feel like your silence is being misread or your boundaries are being questioned. You're not reduced to a role. You're not the strong one. You're not the fixer. You're not the emotional anchor. You're just a person who's allowed to exist without explanation. I've also noticed that aligned people don't rush closeness. They don't push intimacy before trust has formed. They don't confuse access with connection. They let things build naturally. There's no urgency to stay close, no pressure to prove loyalty, and no fear that space will destroy the bond. Because what's real doesn't require surveillance, and what's aligned doesn't need to be controlled. This is how I learned the difference between someone being around me and someone being for me. People who are for you don't destabilize when you change the terms. They don't disappear when you stop overgiving, and they don't resent you for choosing yourself. They don't need you to stay small to feel comfortable. If someone requires your silence, your proximity, or your compliance to stay connected, that's not alignment, that's dependency. And dependency will always resist your growth. Alignment doesn't ask you to abandon yourself to maintain closeness. It doesn't ask you to explain why you need space. And it doesn't ask you to carry the emotional weight of the relationship alone. When someone is for you, you don't feel pulled. You feel met. You don't feel drained. You feel grounded. You don't feel like you're constantly adjusting your tone, your timing, or your presence. You're not trying to be understood. You already are. And that's the quiet truth. Alignment doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand loyalty, and it doesn't require proximity to survive. If you have to work to stay connected, that connection was never really aligned to begin with. If this video resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to my channel to continue the conversation. On this channel, we have conversations around topics such as confidence, jealousy, envy, boundary setting, and healing from narcissistic abuse. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.